Thank you, Jerry. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas. My name is Tim Behrens. I try to get out as many gospel tracts out as possible here in the secret suicide capital of the world, where suicides are not reported here, but in the hometowns of where people came from. And yet, there's no other city I'd rather be in. I do not wear a mask, an ear loop mask. In fact, if you look on the back of the packaging of these ear loop masks, this is what you'll read. This product is an ear loop mask. This product is not a respirator and will not provide any protection against COVID-19, coronavirus, or other viruses or contaminants. I believe Psalm 91. And we start the program with it each week. I forgot last week, but I am getting older, 74 and a half. But before I introduce you to today's guest, let me read Psalm 91, because if you're a believer, you'll want to hold on to this. He that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge, and my fortress, my God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked. Because thou hast made the Lord, which is my refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation, there shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their hands, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone. Thou shalt tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under feet. Because He hath set His love upon me, therefore will I deliver him. I will set him on high, because he hath known my name. He shall call upon me, and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. Psalm 91, may the Lord bless the reading of His word to our hearts. And in a couple of hours, Tim Groover and I will be handing out love bags on Fourmaster Street, where there are probably more homeless than any other street here in Las Vegas, with bags packed by Mitch and Teresa Nemore. And these love bags contain a muffin, a bottle of water, a chick track or two, a track maybe by John McTiernan, dealing with broken hearts, and then a wonderful newspaper entitled Russia Invades Mideast, The Last Trumpet. The website, lasttrumpet.info, and if we could only talk to the man who put that out 40 years ago. Dave Hauser, are you on the line?
Shalom, brother. How are you?
Good, brother. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you.
You and your brother read The Late Great Planet Earth by Hal Lindsey, and it changed your life. Tell us about that.
Well, interesting. First, my brother and I saw the movie. Orson Welles, the famous English actor, was the narrator. We saw the movie, and it was a very simple premise, that the ancient Hebrew prophets saw what was going to happen in the future. Now, I'm a businessman. If you say something's going to happen, well, I'd really like some empirical, irrefutable evidence. Well, we saw the movie, got the book, did the research, and if it's correct in its analysis of what they say is going to happen, and it was written 50 years ago, as we're speaking on the radio today, we'd have to see Iran publicly threatening to destroy Israel, Russia involved in the Middle East, big problems in Syria, a global unsolvable problem over Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Temple Mount, a coming Mideast peace treaty, a coming global cashless society, and a global pandemic. Well, you follow the news just like I do, and it appears to be a correct analysis, Tim.
Why can't everybody see that? Is it because they don't want to?
Well, the exciting thing is this, okay? I've been talking about it just like you have for about 40 years, and the reaction lately has been stupendous. People are very, very concerned about where the world is headed. They don't have a clue as to what's going to be happening. Forget about next week. They don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. And what happens is I have the opportunity to bump into people occasionally the second time. And when I do bump into them the second time, I remind them about what we talked about. I'll give you an example. There's a auto repair shop up the road, and I spent about 15 minutes talking to the owners, and probably a month or two later, I called them up, and they said, Dave, it's funny you called. We were just talking about what you talked about. So people cannot forget. Prophecy is very, very powerful. We don't control the news. We're just casual observers. But when they see what you say is going to happen. And the one thing I do point out to them, which is very important, I tell them that there's no group to join, because they think possibly maybe I'm a Jehovah's Witness or whatever. I tell them there's no group to join. It's not the end of the world. And the other thing I tell them, that if I explain to them how well things are going to work out in the future, they call my wife and get me an appointment with a psychiatrist. Because when you analyze the new city of Jerusalem, where we're going to be spending eternity, it's rather amazing. So I make them laugh a little bit. And, I give them a business card. I tell them to call me. And it just, I've never experienced a time when we've had such people that are so receptive now to what's going on.
Absolutely.
And it's a message of hope.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen that with the tracks here in Las Vegas.
Right.
It's just amazing. We go into Walmart. If you had told me 3 months ago I'd be in Walmart handing out tracts and my friends would be outside doing the same, instead of on the bridges, I'd say you're nuts. But that's where all the people are these days, and people are very open. I've gone up to workers at Walmart and handed them a tract, and I say, when you get home tonight, here's some good movies for you to watch, and I have the Ray Comfort movies on the back, fullyfreefilms.com, and then, of course, the tract itself. And incredible response, just incredible response. Now, Dave, talking with Dave Hauser from The Last Trumpet, what do you say to kids who've been raised in the church and they've heard in the 70s? I remember I used to attend Calvary Chapel in Costa Mesa. I remember Chuck Smith in 1975 say, I don't see how the Lord can tarry for another year. I interviewed a fellow who wrote 88 Reasons Why the Lord Will Come Back in 1988. And then I interviewed him again in 1989. And I said, what are you going to do if the Lord doesn't come back in 1989? He said, well, I guess I'll go back to watching professional wrestling. But a lot of us who grew up in the church really felt the Lord was going to be coming. And here we are, 2020, and the Lord still hasn't returned. What do you say to those who are the skeptics? They used to be in the church, but are now departing from the faith.
Well, the Bible describes that no man knows the day or the hour, but there are specific things that are going to happen. And if you had told me 40 years ago that we would print The Last Trumpet and it would take 40 years for these things to happen, I would still be enthusiastic, but it's, like I said, we don't know the exact time. But I'll give you another quick example. I have a book, Clarence Larkin, Dispensational Truth. It was published in 1917, and he has a chart called What the Prophets Saw, and I highlight in the corner 1917, then on the chart he has Return of the Jews, and right underneath he has Ezekiel chapter 36 and chapter 37. Now, if Clarence Larkin could get on the radio today and we say, oh, gee, by the way, Clarence, Israel has become a nation. They've recaptured Jerusalem. They're working on the Mideast Peace Treaty. Oh, Clarence, did you see the barcode on everything you buy? Did you see the fact that we're going to a cashless society? The fact that the condition in the whole world is pretty much like Sodom and Gomorrah, et cetera, Clarence would be like Paul Revere, okay? Because he knew what was going to happen 100 years ago, 1917. And the critical thing is the return of Israel. Now, coming up, I think in July, the Israeli government is talking about annexing part of the West Bank. Well, that's Judea. Well, that's Zechariah. Jerusalem and Judea will be a burdensome stone, and all the nations of the earth will be gathered together against them. So basically, the Europeans are upset. The whole world is upset. The Vatican is upset. Everybody's upset that, they're going to be taking over this land. Well, that's exactly what Zechariah said. So everything is accelerating and converging.
Have you been to Ramallah?
No. As a matter of fact, I've never been to Israel. And I'll tell you why, okay? I'm just kidding, but I have the Jerusalem syndrome. If I go to Jerusalem, I probably won't want to come home. So I haven't been there, no. But I've seen videos. I'm very familiar with it, but yeah, I haven't been there.
Well, my friend and I and a sister, my friend Mike Cahill, who's a pilot, and sister Janie went there. And as we were going into Ramallah, Ramallah is the headquarters of the PLO. And you'll see a sign in Arabic, Hebrew, and English, and it says, "This road leads to Area A, quote unquote, under the Palestinian Authority. The entrance for Israeli citizens is forbidden, dangerous to your lives, and is against the Israeli law." You will never see that in the national media. And it just amazes me that the hatred that people have, and especially the Muslims. And of course, it tells so in the Quran, Surah 9:5, and many other places. Do you believe that Jewish people need to be saved?
Oh, well, absolutely. It's in the book of Romans. And sad to say, we published 2 newspapers. One, The Last Trumpet, Russia Invades the Mideast. The other one is The Last Shofar, and it talks about Jerusalem. Now, if I dressed up as an Orthodox Jewish person and actually stood in front of every born-again church from California to Manhattan and waited for a coherent presentation that would appeal to an Orthodox Jewish person, I'd be waiting for an awful long time. Now, the Bible specifically says that we're supposed to preach the gospel to the Jew first and also to the Greek. So being first means there's a list. And not only is it on the list, it's first on the list. So sad to say, most born-again churches, not only is it not first on the list, it's not even on the list. So it doesn't get any simpler than that.
Yeah.
So we published The Last Shofar, the Jerusalem edition, and hopefully by the end of the show we can talk about how we can send people free copies.
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
My friend and I, we've been to Israel 9 times, and we've gone, from the north to the south, Dan to Beersheba, and we've handed out a tract called Love the Jewish People, put out by Chick Publications. People can read it at chick.com, Love the Jewish People. And we had no problems handing out the tract in Tel Aviv, but Jerusalem, it was difficult. The Orthodox surrounded our car. We went into, Sister Janie went in to buy a couple of bagels, and when we came out, we could not move. The Orthodox would not allow us to move. And finally, we were able to get out of there. But there was a very famous Bible teacher. He's still living, and he was speaking here in Las Vegas at the Thomas and Mack Center. And a friend and I went to see him, and I was amazed that he had Jewish rabbis on the platform with him, Orthodox Jewish rabbis. And I thought, what in the world is going on? And then when there was a Jewish film festival in West Los Angeles at the New Art Theater, we went over there and we were handing out Love the Jewish People to the Jewish people coming out. And one lady said to me, "Why can't you be like blank blank?" She mentioned his name. He never tries to proselytize us. And I thought, man, their blood is going to be on his hands. What do you say? And I don't know if he's taken that verse, "All Israel shall be saved," or what. What do you say to this fella who believes that you don't need to reach the Jews with salvation?
Well, he's gotten a theological lobotomy. He is completely clueless, and it's a basic tenet of salvation. Why would they say to preach the gospel to the Jew first? So, quick, exciting testimony. When we republished The Last Shofar, that's the Jerusalem edition, we originally wrote it in 1987, and specifically to share the gospel and point out what's going to be happening during the end times to the Jewish people. We reprinted it probably about 8 or 10 years ago. We printed 20,000 copies. My brother called me. We picked them up on Friday. He said, "Well, Dave, you have to go down to Crown Heights in Brooklyn and pass them out." So I dressed up with a yarmulke, went down to Crown Heights with about 700 copies, spent almost the whole day there. But what happens is, the first gentleman that I gave it to, I gave him a copy. Then, maybe an hour or two later, I went to go hand a copy to somebody, and it was the first guy that I handed it to, and he looks at me and goes, "Are you telling me that we're wrong?" Very simple concept. Isaiah 53, of whom does the prophet speak? It's very, very clear. And it's interesting, they exclude that specific chapter from Isaiah 52, verse 12 to 13, and Isaiah 53 from the Haftorah readings. And if you read it, you'll understand why. So to me, I just get chills every time I get a chance to talk to Jewish people. I'm incredibly excited about it. And to me, it's theological anti-Semitism. To me, it's incredibly disturbing when you look at Zechariah, chapter 13, verses 8 and 9. There's going to be another Holocaust coming. Mm-hmm. Well, if in 1938 we had a hint that the Holocaust was coming and we had documentation to warn the Jewish people, wouldn't we want to warn them? Well, that's how I feel about it. It's very intense, and it's coming soon.
Absolutely. When I was in the service, my best friends were Jews and blacks because they had a sense of humor. I'm not saying nobody else did, but that's the way it was in my circle. And I was in Germany in 1968 when Dr. King was shot and our cities were burning back here. And I had another friend who said the problem is the Jews and the blacks. We get rid of the Jews and the blacks, get rid of the Jews and send the blacks back to Africa, we won't have any more problem. Well, I stupidly started getting stuff from the American Nazi Party. My father was a Baptist minister. Wow. And I'm getting this stuff, and I didn't hate my friends, but I hated the Jews and the blacks out there. We were the only integrated table in the chow hall at Wiesbaden. And not that it was forced that way, that's just the way it was. The blacks would sit over there, the whites over there. And when I got out of the service, I was talking to my father about how the Jews own this and the Jews own that, and Dad listened very patiently. When I was finished, he said, "Tim, a person cannot be a Christian and hate the Jews." I said, "How come?" He says, "Jesus is Jewish." And then I heard another pastor say, every spiritual blessing we have, we owe to the Jewish people. If there were no Jewish people, there'd be no patriarchs, no prophets, no Bible, no Messiah, and no disciples. Jesus himself said in John 4:20 that salvation is of the Jews. And so I tell the brothers in jail, when I go and minister in jail, if somebody's on your lawn burning a cross, singing onward Christian soldiers, wearing a white robe, that doesn't mean they're a Christian. The Bible says in 1 John, if any man says he loves God and hates his brother, he's a liar. For how can he love God whom he hath not seen and hate his brother whom he hath seen? It's just amazing to me out there how people can hate and still consider themselves Christians.
Exactly.
All right, if we want to get one of these last shofar newspapers into the hands of our Jewish friends or neighbors, what do we do? How do we do it?
Okay, you can just email me. It's very simple email, Daystar, Daystar, Daystar Windows at O as in orange, P as in Peter, T as in Thomas. That's OPT online.net. So Daystar Windows at optonline.net. You just have to, send me your mailing address, and we'll send it out right away. It's free of charge. And Tim, do we have a minute or two?
Yeah. We got 5 minutes. Go ahead.
5 minutes. Just going to explain what's going on with The Last Trumpet. You mentioned the whole thing about Hal Lindsey. We read the book, The Late Great Planet Earth, and what happened was, my brother and I started buying these books by the case. It got a little expensive, so we asked the Lord to help us write a little mini Late Great Planet Earth that would be a condensation or a dramatization of what the prophet said was going to happen. Now, I give people this example. If you take two men and say, listen, we want you to write a newspaper of what you think is going to happen 40 years from now about the Middle East, the economy, the social situation, and write the newspaper and then stick it in a tube and come back 40 years later and pull it out of the tube, dust it off, open it up, and then go down to the local newsstand, this is 40 years after you wrote the paper, and see how you did comparing what you thought was going to happen 40 years ago to what is actually happening. Well, Tim, I can't tell you what's going to happen 2 minutes from now.
Right.
So my brother and I prayed that, we could write something like this. So we wrote The Last Trumpet, okay? And what happens, I have a notebook in my office about an inch thick, okay, where I have about 20 different articles. On the left-hand side, we have articles that we wrote April 1980. On the right-hand side, I have articles that basically just came out. I have 20 of them that say the exact same thing on the exact same subject, but in the exact same words. Now, I normally, to explain it, I ask people current day events questions, and I'll just go through them quick. Is the world facing the threat of a worldwide economic collapse and a global trade war? Is Russia involved in a confrontation with Persian Gulf nations over oil? Will the Central Bank of Japan have to devalue their currency, the yen? Is there a crisis in the British economy and downward pressure on the British pound? Is a new monetary system coming that eliminates paper currency? Is the population looking to buy gold due to economic uncertainty? Is the world facing global economic problems due to Western nations' dependence on oil, unbalanced budgets, and lack of leadership? Are drastic weather changes occurring all around the world, and are diseases spreading too rapidly to be contained? Is Europe looking to ratify a constitution and form a more integrated federation? Is the Pope calling for all Christians to unite and compromise past theological differences? Is there a threat of a major earthquake in California? Is there a spiritual and moral collapse occurring all around the world? Is there a major drought in the Mideast affecting the Euphrates River? Is the coming Mideast peace treaty calling for the internationalization of Jerusalem? Now, if you just answered yes to all 14 questions, you have a perfect score. There's just one catch. All these events would happen at the same time as the nations of the world would be involved in a global unsolvable problem over Jerusalem, the West Bank, and the Temple Mount. All these news stories are happening or about to happen, but we wrote about them in April 1980. Please read through The Last Trumpet and see if you find any correlation to the events I listed above and what my brother and I wrote 40 years ago. And let's put it this way. We've been working with John McTernan. He wrote this book. It's called As America's Done to Israel. You can go to his website, usaprophecy.com, and you'll see a friend of ours, Gary Krupp, giving John's book to the Prime Minister of Israel. You got to go to the website and take a look at it. And then on John's website, right on the homepage, we have a video where we shot at Occupy Wall Street. You can take a look at that. It's on the homepage, just Last Trumpet video. And you can see the original copy of The Last Trumpet that we wrote 40 years ago. And people are, when I showed them the comparison book, they think we ripped out the newspaper articles and then wrote the newspaper. No, we wrote the newspaper, Tim, 40 years ago.
Amen. Now, the website, lasttrumpet.info, does that still work?
Well, no, yeah. It's basically, it's on usaprophecy.com. usaprophecy.com.
Okay.
And, right. Yeah. And then, what do you call it? If you want to view The Last Trumpet, you can go to the section on the bottom where it says printable tracks.
Okay.
You click it on, and you can get all 8 pages.
We got to run, Dave.
Copies.
We got to run. Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us, brother.
Sounds good. God bless
you, brother. Keep on the firing line.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And you can hear today's program on YouTube here in a day or two on Jesus and Tim in Las Vegas. And also, Super Dave has the newsletter up, Trackman, TRACTMAN, tb@gmail.com, and I'd love to get involved in that. Thank you so much for your prayers. My friend Robert Craig is starting a program next Saturday at 11 a.m. I hope you can join him for that. Live for the Lord, bring home all A's, and if you're on the verge of suicide, go to fullyfreefilms.com and watch the movie Exit. fullyfreefilms.com. See you here, there, or in the air. Bye-bye.
Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Give me oil in my lamp, I pray, hallelujah. Give me oil in my lamp, keep me burning. Keep me burning till the break of day. I will sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. Sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King. Oh yeah. Take it away, girls.
Give me unction in my gumption, let me function, function, function. Give me unction in my gumption, I pray. Hallelujah. Give me unction in my gumption, let me function, function, function. Let me function till the break of day. Oh yeah.
I will sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King of Kings. I will sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna, sing Hosanna to the King. Oh yeah. of the Lord. Give me gas for my Ford, I pray. Hallelujah. Give me